Hello and welcome to Main Street Live. I'm so glad to see you all here today. We have an incredible story for you about one of God's people doing incredible things, which is pretty amazing. How many of you have ever wished that you had a superpower? If I could pick a superpower, I have gone back and forth on what would it be. I've always wanted to be able to swim in the ocean and not be eaten by monsters. I thought that would be cool if you could go really fast. Or flying. Flying would be pretty cool too. Well, today there is a man who was invincible as he followed Jesus in doing what Jesus asked. Pretty cool. Now what's interesting is I have heard of other people who either chose to follow God's will and were protected from very unusual things, and then people who were like, you know what, I'm not going to follow God's will, and then there were challenges that happened as well. So when God sends you on a mission, the safest place to be is in His will on that mission. You know, one of those people was George Washington. Did you know that early on, when George Washington was a lieutenant, there was a battle with the Indians, and he was marching, and you know, in those days, the leaders sat on top of their horses and commanded the ranks. Well, the Indian chief said, hey, take out the leaders. And so they shot at George Washington, and at the end of the battle, George Washington looked at his jacket, and there were seven bullet holes that went through the jacket but did not penetrate his skin. And years later, the Indian chief said, I told my people to fire on the leaders, and after we had fired on you and I had fired on you myself, I said, this man must be protected by God. Let's quit wasting our bullets and fire on other people. Pretty incredible. I also heard about a missionary who was raised on the mission field, and they were in a very rural place where there were no hospitals, no protection, and he was in the process of being born, and his mom was pregnant, and his dad said, you know what, we need to go to a hospital, actually 4 days journey, because I think there's something wrong with his pregnancy. And sure enough there was, and his life was spared. But then as a 2-year-old back on the front lines, one day a panther jumps through the window of their hut and is about to eat him, and then turns its head and takes the dog instead. Sad for the dog, but incredible for this missionary, and I actually got to meet him, and he was a pretty incredible fellow. So my desire is that as we learn from this story, when God sends you on a mission, the safest place you can be is in His will. And He will guide you. Now, eventually, He may allow you to die, and guess what? We all do die at a time. But the question is, on that journey, are you in His will? So I need for you to sit up straight. I need for you to point your nose right to the front and freeze as we hear what we're going to learn about today. I'll give you a hint. The man's name is Paul.
In the eye of the storm, you remain in control, and in the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. When my hopes and dreams are far from me and I'm running out of faith, I see the future, I picture slowly fade away. And when the tears of pain and heartache are falling down my face, I find my peace in Jesus' name. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control, and in the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm.